You, are you expecting everybody?
I haven't heard that anyone can't join. It looks like we're missing committee member Breeding and committee member Way.
Oh, is it Eric on? I don't
Yes.
see him.
Hey, Tom.
Oh, there you are.
I was probably just off your screen.
That's where you should be.
Better not heard and not seen.
No, at the top of the screen.
All right. Well, should we go ahead and do the roll call?
Yes. Okay. Committee member Breeding. Not yet here. Vice Chair Choi.
Here.
Committee member Cooper.
Here.
Committee member Peterson.
Here.
Committee member Way. I think we're still waiting on Chair Larson.
Here.
Great.
All right. And want to go ahead with the minutes from last time?
Any comments on the minutes?
Have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
second.
Yeah. All right. Do a roll call for vote.
Roll call vote. Committee member Breeding. Vice Chair Choi.
Aye.
Committee member Cooper.
Aye.
Committee member Peterson.
Aye.
I think we're still waiting on committee member Way and Chair Larson.
Aye.
Minutes approved.
Great. Great, thanks. All right, so if there's anybody from the public that wants to make a comment on something that's not on the agenda, this would be the time to do that. It looks like Jeremiah has his hand raised.
Yeah, are you ready, Jeff, with the timer? All right, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I don't need a timer. I never go over my 3 minutes. Hey, so I just want to let everybody know that I attended the East Bay Community Energy meeting today. It was on Zoom. It was earlier today. It was at 12:30, something like that. So I noticed Nick Pilch was on there. That was kind of neat. He came on as the mayor. And I think every mayor of every city was on there. I had my public comment and I said I was from Albany. I think I was the only person from Albany that made a public comment. I just said that, you know, Albany supports, you know, renewable energy, you know, nothing like coal, diesel. And I specifically said no nuclear. I said I'm from Albany and Albany does not want any nuclear energy to be used, especially from that Diablo Valley plant, right? So they were talking about PG&E still uses that power plant from Diablo Valley nuclear. They were talking about the Brilliant 100. They were talking about everything. And boy, they have a lot of money in their budget. It's like 200 something million dollars. I guess they got $40 million left over from last year or something, but it was great to attend that meeting. I just, you know, voice my opinion, you know, that way someone from Albany is saying, you know, no nuclear, you know, somebody from Albany. So that was great. That was wonderful. And it's good to be involved. So that's it. That was my meeting I went to today. Just want to observe and report that I attended that and I learned a lot. It was kind of nice seeing Mayor Nick Pilch on there. I'm not sure what that was all about, but I think it was, you know, professional. So yeah, I'm not sure if anybody in this meeting was there. I'm sure maybe probably somebody was. But that's okay if you weren't. I was there. So yeah, keep up the good work, everybody. At the Port of Oakland, I mentioned before, I've seen directly greenhouse gases and those ships burning raw fossil fuel, raw bunker oil out of the ground, mineral oil and all this dirty stuff. And inside the Port of Oakland, it's all diesel trucks, all diesel everywhere. And at the end of the day, every day, I would have a headache. And I know it's from all that bad air quality. So keep up the good work, everybody. And we're making some good progress.
All right. Thanks, Jeremiah. Is there any other public comments? I don't see any hands raised.
Nope.
So Lizzie, Max is in the house.
Oh, great. Welcome, Max.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm a few minutes late.
Welcome.
All right.
All right. So Lizzie, we'll move on to the announcements. You have a few announcements to make.
Yes. Great. Just want to make sure I'm not on mute. Whenever I start screen sharing, it's like my whole view of everything changes. Welcome, everyone. This evening, we'll start off with our announcements. Starting off with sustainability events and resources. As I've been mentioning, we're co-hosting an EV 101 virtual workshop on December 9th at 5:30 p.m. I encourage committee members to attend. We're advertising this event as being open to all, whether you already own an EV or are just interested in learning more, or someone who is interested in purchasing an EV. We're excited about this workshop that'll be co-hosted between Albany, City of Berkeley, and the City of San Francisco. And that's a big night for the Climate Action Committee and the sustainability team. Michelle will also be giving her green building presentation to planning and zoning. So just keep that in mind. It's a big, if you sign up for both events, you might be on Zoom for a few hours. Next, there are a few BayRen webinars coming up in both Spanish and English, teaching people all about all electric appliances. And thanks to Stop Waste, Albany contractors will be receiving a mailer with information about these upcoming webinars. Drive Clean Bay Area is currently accepting applications for the Group Buy program for a number of electric vehicles. We'll be advertising this program as a part of the EV 101 workshop. EBCE is offering its Resilient Home program, which offers group buy discounts on solar and solar plus storage. Or I think you can go with just storage if you already have solar, but that's an interesting program. You can learn more about it on ebce.org. Stop Waste launched a new, if you were familiar with the previous Recycleware tool, where you could type in a tricky item that you're not sure where it goes for recycling, and it would tell you where to take it. Stop Waste launched a new version of that that's kind of gotten a bit of a facelift, and also focuses more on reuse and repurposing rather than just recycling and disposal. It's a really cool tool, so I encourage you to check it out. If you go to albanyca.org/recycle, it's posted all over our website. So I encourage you to go take a look. And then speaking of albanyca.org/recycle, we just posted our holiday recycling brochure that gives information on how to properly compost fruitcakes and old pumpkins and take broken lights to a household hazardous waste facility. All you need to know and more about recycling common household items during the holidays is online and will be mailed to anyone who gets their waste management bill mailed to their house. an update on our sustainability projects. Like I mentioned, Michelle has been hard at work on the green building resolution, which will be going to planning and zoning on December 9th. That meeting starts at 6:30 p.m. Is that correct, Michelle? Or 6:30 or 7?
Yeah, I could check on it.
We'll check. Sorry. I always think 7:30 because that's when this meeting starts. And then we're planning to go to council with the resolution in November. That's our tentative timeline. Sorry? Jeff?
You just said November. It's actually December that we're going to council.
Going in December. Thank you.
And planning and zoning starts at 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Perfect. You'll be getting an update later tonight, but I've started working, as I mentioned, with an intern from UC Berkeley and with Patrick Journey from Community Climate Solutions on a carbon-free Albany engagement plan. I'll give more information about that later this evening. And as the committee saw earlier this year or late last year, Michelle has been working on a leaf blower alternatives flyer, which gives information about leaf blowers, which the committee gave feedback on a few months ago, and it is now on our website, available for anyone who has questions about alternatives to leaf blowers. Next is an EBCE update. The Albany City Council discussed this item on Monday night, and they voted on the following ranked choice list for default products. This is the same list that they discussed on October 5th and the same list that the Climate Action Committee recommended to them back in September. Some of you may have heard EBCE decided to pull the nuclear option from the table. So that will not be on the EBCE board's agenda this evening, and therefore it's unlikely that the nuclear option will be available as a product on EBCE's portfolio in 2021, or at least in the start of 2021. There's a small chance that if another EBCE board member were decide to take it up and pursue an electricity product that had nuclear in it, EBCE could bring it back. We kept it on the resolution just in case that if happened. That way we wouldn't have to go back for another discussion. We would just follow the resolution that was passed on Monday. They also decided to opt all municipal accounts into Renewable 100.
Can I ask a question? Did they give an explanation for why they took nuclear power off the list of options?
So the city of Hayward City Council had a discussion of this the prior week, and the Hayward board member was originally the EBCE board member that was the first one that recommended that EBCE staff look into providing a nuclear option to cities that explicitly requested access to it. When when Hayward City Council met last week, they decided to not pursue the nuclear option at all. They were just no longer interested in having it at all. They had changed their minds. EBCE staff decided that because Hayward was the champion of this product and because they're currently 80% of the Brilliant 100 customer base, they were going to pull the nuclear option from the table because there wasn't what they saw the same level of support for the product after Hayward decided they were no longer interested. So we found out that the option would be pulled on Thursday morning of last week. So we didn't update our council materials. And like I said, we left it on there just in case EBCE were to decide to bring it back because it's kind of come and gone over the last 6 months. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lizzie, can you remind us?
Sorry, I heard Max.
Sorry, go ahead, Max.
Oh, yeah. Can you remind us what the Brilliant 100 with subsidy refers to?
Yes. The Brilliant 100 with subsidy pretty much means that EBCE will continue offering Brilliant 100 even though it's a money-losing product. So it costs more to provide Brilliant 100 to customers than EBCE recoups in rates for the product. So by calling it Brilliant 100 with the subsidy, it means that revenue coming in from other electricity products like Bright Choice and Renewable 100 will help subsidize the cost of providing Brilliant 100 to communities and customers that still are on that product. And EBCE has expressed that this is probably only a solution that can last through 2021. And the board will be discussing tonight what the actual outcome of Brilliant 100 will be. But if the board ends up voting to keep Brilliant 100 with the subsidy, it is likely that we'll be having a discussion again at some point next year to determine a new default product, because Brilliant 100 doesn't seem sustainable.
Right.
And I think Nick had a question.
Well, I was going to say this is a really convoluted and complex and annoying issue, because it actually ended up playing anti-nuclear people off of people concerned with carbon reduction, and we're the losers all around, whereas PG&E picks up more money for a product that we're still paying. We're still paying for the Diablo Canyon power, whether we use it or not, through the PICA. So now we're paying, if they subsidize it, I talked to someone at EBCE, it means EBCE is going to be spending a couple $1 million to give the PG&E just for the privilege of not putting Diablo Canyon on our power source sticker. But we all still use it anyway, so we'll be paying for it twice. And $2 million are lost that could have been used for improving battery storage and other things that we desperately need in order to capture midday solar. So I'm actually really annoyed by this whole thing, and I think it was unfortunate that we got kind of built in the process. But it's going to come up again. Diablo Canyon goes away. What's even more important is Diablo Canyon, which provides 10% of the electricity that California uses, going away completely in 2025, and there's absolutely no plan other than firing up more natural gas generators. There's really no plan in place for how we replace that sustainably. I mean, we'd have to practically double the amount of solar and provide battery to back it up. So I really need to get on East Bay Community's case to really pursue that and just not kick the can down the road and get distracted that it's an anti-nuclear argument when it is not at all.
And sorry?
I agree with you, Nick. It's ridiculous.
The final piece of the update is the EBCE board will vote on whether or not to approve jurisdictions' default product requests on December 16th. So on December 16th, our default product choices will be finalized based on that ranked choice list. I'm going to pass the mic to Jeff for an election results update.
Yeah, I think everybody on the committee is well aware of the outcome of the election, but just to refresh your memory, Measure DD did pass. It garnered 58% of the vote, and that's a measure that will increase taxes on our utilities, and with a language in the measure that would provide for, although it's a general tax and it goes into the general fund and the city council ultimately can spend it any way it wants, the measure was written with an intention that 1/3 goes towards climate action plan implementation and sustainability programs. So as we start to work on our budget over the next couple of years, usually in spring of every 2 years, we start to work on our budget. So that'll be beginning in 2021 and usually March or April. There'll probably be some discussions about how these funds would be prioritized for programs that the committee would be interested in. We're hopeful we can fulfill that commitment. We are going into a period of time that may not be the best of times fiscally for municipal governments. but we won't know the details for a few more months. So it's good news that the measure passed, and we'll be striving to fulfill the commitment to the voters in the measure, and the details will have to follow. And probably the March to June timeframe is usually when the budgeting process works its way through the finance department, the city manager's office, and ultimately to the city council.
Jeff, can I ask a question about that budgeting process? You said it starts in March. So if we were going to provide input into priorities, when is the appropriate time for our committee to do that?
Well, I think the committee can talk about its priorities at any point. There just won't be dollar figures to look at until later in the spring. But if you wanted to start to think about programs and priorities, we could fit that in anytime the committee wanted to.
But in terms of getting it as part of the budget process, when do you need that by? Do you need that by March? Or that, my point is not when we do it, is when does the city need that kind of feedback?
Yeah. So budgeting is a very iterative process. It starts internally with some rough guesses, and it gets refined over a few months. I think the idea would be that at the staff level, we're going to start with that 1/3 and just set it aside, right? And not try to identify the particular details of how that might be expended. And then the finance department takes the lead on cranking through the numbers, looking at revenue trends, looking at expense trends, see what happens with CalPERS and labor union agreements and so on and so forth. And then ultimately the city council would be the ones to say, okay, we can make the commitment this year to the 1/3, or we need a little bit more for something else because of a fiscal crisis. So I don't know that, I think the sooner you start to talk about how you would like to prioritize that, the better. We don't need that precise prioritization really towards the end, or even after the budget is adopted. Theoretically, the budget could be adopted just with a single line item that says, here's a dollar amount, and let's develop the programs to expend those funds. So I think it helps. Tactically, I think it helps if the committee can articulate something that that ensures that the city council wants to make that commitment. So I would say starting sooner rather than later. But again, I think it's more prioritizing without the dollar figures, precise dollar figures, and being able to use that prioritization list to advocate for the full allocation. If that makes sense. Be happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, I just had a couple comments. One thing, just to follow on with what Tom brought up, I think it's also important that as we talk about we prioritized, the three, the green, the electrification of buildings, zero emission transportation, and then green infrastructure, especially street trees. So we can start trying to identify where there would be need for finances either to support incentives or other things, but real specific use of funds have not been clearly identified at this point. And Lizzie, you can correct me if that's true, but we might put a priority on that so that it doesn't end up with a situation, gee, we have this 1/3 set aside, but nobody's come up with a realistic sort of outline of what that would be spent on. I think we should spend some time putting together at least a skeletal, almost like spreadsheet of where funds could be used and how for incentives, especially. And the other thing I want to point out was it may have been a tax increase for some people, but it's actually a tax decrease for our qualified low-income members of the community. So I think we need to keep saying that rather than just saying it was a tax increase.
Any other questions before we conclude announcements? Okay.
Thanks. Thanks for the updates. Am I off mute? Did I get
Yes.
myself? Yeah. Okay. Good. I used my little button this time. So. Okay. And so, Lizzie, you have a presentation on the Bay Conservation and Development Commission.
I do.
All right. I'm sorry. Do we?
Mhm.
Is there any public comment on the presentation, on the announcements?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Great. So, as you saw as an attachment to your agenda packet, a partnership of local agencies pursued this Adapting to Rising Tides research and report. And tonight specifically, I'm going to give an overview of the Adapting to Rising Tides project and then go into a little bit more of a deeper dive, not too deep because I'm not an expert on these things, but a little bit of a deeper dive into the East Bay Crescent assessment, which was attachment 3 under this item on your agenda packet. So as I mentioned, the Adapting to Rising Tides study and report was put together by BCDC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and the Association of Bay Area Governments, BARC, which is, Jeff, you might know better than I do, and I'm realizing I can't pull up my notes while I'm screen sharing, but BARC, Caltrans, and then many public, private, and non-profit partners.
The Bay Area Regional Council, right?
I'm not, I'll track that down. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head either.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to know all these, but I'm realizing my notes are buried underneath this screen share. It was a 3-year endeavor, and the partners talked to over 600 stakeholders and community members. So they really wanted to get a narrative of how how rising tides would affect different communities in different ways. Specifically, they analyzed the impact to transportation, future growth areas, natural lands, and vulnerable communities. And the report really aims to demonstrate the cost of inaction. So it didn't analyze what rising tides would do to the community if we invested in all this infrastructure and started taking on projects. It just demonstrates what will happen if we do absolutely nothing. All right. It's, for a little bit more detail, it's the first regional assessment of sea level rise impact on the Bay Area, and it will help inform regional planning efforts, such as through Plan Bay Area 2050, and also help guide region-wide decision-making. Because as the report illustrates, addressing rising tides is a region-wide endeavor. It wouldn't have a great impact if only one community tried to adapt its city to rising tides, because there are interconnected systems such as transportation, jobs, communities that overlap over city boundaries. So as to give a little bit of a sense of what would be impacted if there was no action on sea level rise and there was permanent flooding, not just from storm surges, but if lands were to be actually inundated full time, there would be loss of both existing jobs as well as loss of future jobs and future job growth in the region. About 13,000 housing units would no longer be habitable, insurable, or desirable to live in. 70,000 new planned housing units won't be built or will be built outside of the region. and around 28,000 socially vulnerable residents will become even more vulnerable. Significant impacts will be felt by daily commuters, both those driving in personal vehicles and those taking public transit, and there will be loss of critical habitats such as wetlands, and due to that habitat loss, we'll likely see loss in local species. So now diving in a little bit more into this East Bay Crescent, which gives more information about how rising tides will directly impact the city of Albany. So this East Bay Crescent assessment includes both the counties of Alameda and Contra Costa, and the cities of Richmond, Albany, Berkeley, Emeryville, Oakland, and El Cerrito. It covers how impacts will be felt by residential, commercial, industrial, and recreational areas in all of those cities and both counties, how it affects major transportation systems, and as I mentioned, how it will affect critical habitat, specifically in our area, wetlands. So I took this screenshot from the report showing what the location is, and you can see in a gray square, it pulls out Albany and that area. I should also note that all photos are taken directly from the report. Transportation systems, there will be significant impacts to both I-580 and I-80 freeways, which will affect commuting and other transportation needs. There will be disruptions to the Union Pacific Railway, which carries goods and people across the East Bay. There will also be regional BART station disruptions. So even though Albany doesn't have a BART station, it's likely that residents in Albany use BART and they may not be able to get on or off at spots anymore because it's impacted by flooding. And as I mentioned, there will be other impacts to public transit routes such as AC Transit bus routes. For priority conservation areas, which the report abbreviates as PCAs, Albany Beach is one to note because beach waterfronts are particularly vulnerable to flooding because they cannot accommodate increased water levels. So it's likely that sandy beaches will become inundated permanently. And Albany Beach is predicted to be impacted by flooding at 12 inches. Regional trail systems and the San Francisco Bay Trail will be felt in Albany, specifically the piece near Golden Gate Fields, which will be exposed to flooding at 36 inches. And Cerrito Creek will first be exposed to flooding at 36 inches, but it's important to note that increased water, either from rain events or increased flooding, can cause embankments or cause the creek to overflow at that 77-inch mark, which is when water would start flooding into nearby residencies, causing damage to homes. So this is just pulling out, as I mentioned, specifically what will be impacted at what water level. And this is a helpful graphic that shows at what level, starting at the lowest level, will each critical piece be impacted. Additional impacts to consider beyond just physical are the society and equity impacts. The report notes that these flooding impacts will hinder the ability of residents and visitors to access the Bay Trail, other natural lands, and have access to those, seeing unique species in critical habitat areas. For the economy, obviously the transportation routes will have an effect on the economy, and the report specifically calls out the Pacific Railway impacts, which will limit the ability to transport goods and people across the East Bay. And to the environment, there will be loss of wetlands habitat, potential species loss, and potentially the loss of the sand beach. So I don't know about anyone else, but reading this report, reports like these are always overwhelming, but it makes me feel positive that we're already taking action to address some of these issues. In our CAP alone, it addresses partnering regionally to address coastal flooding impacts to the Albany waterfront and freeway entrance, and also our effort to continue to restore and maintain creeks to accommodate increased rain events. And I think we could have included in there too, increased flooding events. Albany is also being analyzed as a part of a regional grant program. We received a regional entity, SFEI, received grant funding to do an analysis of how sea level rise will affect groundwater and potentially beyond just water inundation, how our groundwater will be affected and what contaminants it could bring up. So those are a few things we're doing locally to either learn more or address the impacts. But I think the main message from the report that I saw is that the report aims to communicate these shared vulnerabilities to inspire region-wide action. Because as I mentioned, large adaptation needs like this require region-wide partnerships and region-wide action. That concludes my presentation. And at this point, I can try my best to answer any questions. Or Jeff, if you feel that I missed anything, because I know you've seen a presentation about this previously, feel free to give some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think just the context for this report is the foundation. It's serving as the foundation for figuring out a way for the Bay Area to collectively work together to prepare our infrastructure for the coming increase in sea level. And it probably will, this is going to kick off a process that will end up in some legislative package that goes through Sacramento that would lead to regional agencies probably being responsible for planning and implementing infrastructure improvements and regulations to prevent more infrastructure being constructed that will be vulnerable in the coming years. It's very early on. I don't think there is any idea exactly what the structure of this would be, but it will serve. I think if we look back 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, this will be kind of the year or two, and this will be the analysis that will kick off some discussions that will end up being very, very important, and particularly for shoreline cities like Albany. So I don't think there's any particular action that the committee or the city of Albany needs to take right now, other than to make you aware that this is what's going on, and also just to benefit from the analysis to see what they've found for us here in Albany. And like Lizzie, we'll try to answer questions. We're not better experts in this, but it is something we've been thinking about.
Any other questions? Can't see.
I don't have any questions, but I have some comments when we get to that.
Okay. I just had a question. Did they have anything about projections of sea level rise in here? Is there any new update on that?
As far as years, we're expected to see it.
I mean, they put in like what would happen if sea level rise was 77 inches, but yeah. I don't really have in my head a good, barometer of where we're at and how fast it's happening. Did they include that in the report?
I don't know that they did any new science. I think they were relying on other work that's already been done. From the presentation I heard, the notes that I jotted down about that is that their projection by 2050 is somewhere between 12 and 32 inches of increase in sea level.
Okay.
And by 2100, 10 feet. So looking at this graph, it's 80 years from now, we're at the end.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks. And then did they have any mitigating or adapting proposals in this report? This is all the dire consequences. Do they have specific actions that they're recommending that the region take?
At this time, it seems like this report is really just to kickstart that conversation about, okay, what are the impacts going to be? And then from this, how can we partner regionally to figure out those mitigation measures? I think in the larger report, there were some suggestions about what could be done, but from what I read in the East Bay Crescent piece specifically, there wasn't any like, do this and achieve this.
Mm-hmm. I was just wondering about if they had any ideas or, that we hadn't incorporated into our climate action plan. So, but doesn't sound like that they went that far in that part of it.
Well, they might have ideas, but those ideas will likely be region-wide approaches. But yeah, at this time, we don't have in our climate action plan beyond the continuing to restore creeks and partner regionally to address coastal flooding.
Okay. Any other questions? I have to flip back and forth from the screens there. Okay. Did you have anything else, Lizzie? Is that the end of the presentation?
That's the end of the presentation. I don't know if there is public comment. I can't see.
We do have one public comment.
Okay. Let's go in here.
I'm getting to share screen. Just bear with me a second.
Okay, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. What a great presentation. I did look at the PDF downloads. Yeah, those pictures of that king tide. I remember that king tide in January. I was actually working at the Port of Oakland, and that tide was almost coming up on our dock. Boy, you sure scared me, Mr. Bond, when you said 10 feet by 2100. Yeah. So it seems like we're spending all this money, trying to redo our creeks, and they're going to be flooded in a few years anyway. I mean, what do we do, right? Do we just build a big wall? It's kind of sad. What's going to happen with all of the sewer drains? Is all that stuff going to get backed up and there's going to be sewage on the streets everywhere? Yeah, this is a really big thing right now. So, oh boy. Yeah, what do we do? I don't exactly know. But at least we're working on it. I do feel that, when the oceans start to rise due to global warming, I see all those polar ice caps melting, and where'd all the glaciers go? I remember being a kid and there was just so much ice. And I know all this pollution we put in the environment is making all these tides rise, making global warming happen. And I remember Bill Clinton or something had a global warming video way back in 2000, and it hit the big screen. And everybody was like, oh yeah, what a joke. And here we are today. All those facts, all those charts, all those scientists, they were right. And gosh, 77 inches within the next so many years. So it's like we got to enjoy the Albany beach while we can and enjoy these things while we can. I don't know what it's going to do to Albany, Solano Avenue, all these residents, Gateview, the condos, and all these regional transportation bodies. Yeah, BART, I'm sure the Trans-Bay Tunnel is going to flood. Probably not supposed to tell anybody, but Trans-Bay Tube is flooding, has been flooding for the past couple of years. It's got a crack in it. But nobody's supposed to know about that, really. But they have all these BART people every day coming into Traypac at the Port of Oakland, and with these big, huge water pumps pumping water out the tube. It's a disaster down there. So in the railroad, right? It's going to stop all of our economy. And the biggest picture here is the Port of Oakland.
Jeremiah.
And that's our imports and exports. This is a big deal. So I know that probably they could build up, we could just build up. I'm sure Berkeley Marina is going to be flooded.
Jeremiah, your
So
time is
it's
up.
either time to move to the hills. Oh, okay. Is my time up?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for the comments. Bill Clinton did a lot for the environment and was a great president. But Al Gore's the one that did the Climate Reality movie. And it's a fantastic movie if anybody hasn't seen. I'm sure all of us have. But and then he also founded the Climate Reality Organization, and I actually took the training through that, which is a fantastic experience to go out and do the climate reality talk to your friends and neighbors and people who need to be aware of this. Anyway, Al Gore was the impetus behind all that. So anyway, other comments? All right.
I don't
Anybody
see any.
from the committee? Nick?
Yeah, so a somber report, and certainly talking about what's going to happen out there in our children's lifetime that they're going to be stuck with handling. One thing that I started to think was we should probably worry a bit about doing improvements or attempting things that then might be pointless. I didn't really think anything about that our CAP plan incorporates. But what it also pointed out to me was what's going to go along with this is it's not just the rising tides, it's also going to be bigger storms, hotter hots, sweltering heat, fires. So there's a lot of other stuff. And what it sort of brought to my mind is that the green infrastructure is going to play a more important part in addressing runoff and not having large amounts of water during big storms going down those creeks, and implementing that flooding because it's hitting bay water at a higher level. So I think to some degree this puts a little bit more of a emphasis on bringing in, a more rapid implementation of our green infrastructure policies. So that's one thing I kind of heard in this, because those are things that will address flooding, higher heat, providing shade, other things like that that are going to be in addition to a rising tide.
Any other comments? Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Lizzie. That was very interesting and good to get an update on that. Look forward to getting into the adaptation plans and tactics. All right. So what's next? Okay. So we have the carbon-free Albany draft engagement plan. So Lizzie, you get to talk some more.
Yes, I hope no one's getting tired of the sound of my voice. Let me pull this up now. Okay. Oh, oops. Sorry. Okay. So an update on the draft carbon-free Albany engagement plan. We previously had Patrick Journey from Community Climate Solutions, which is the program that allows jurisdictions to build their more local platforms, which gave birth to our carbon-free Albany platform. We heard from him about different engagement tools and best practices that other cities have pursued. A couple I guess that was 2 months ago. And I have been working with both him and our UC Berkeley intern to come up with some new strategies and to talk through a draft engagement plan. And right now, the vision is that this engagement plan will guide engagement through the end of 2021. I just feel like that's a bite-sized piece to tackle, and then there can be another engagement plan for 2022, because I feel like engagement best practices have changed a lot just in the last 8 months. We only engage online at this point, and so it seems like looking at best practices changes so often. That's what made sense to me. Of course, I welcome feedback. I'm getting too far ahead though in my slides. So as a reminder, this is what the front page of our Carbon Free Albany platform looks like. We launched back in January 2019 at our CAP workshop. And since then, thanks to a lot of it, thanks to Bianca Hutner, our Civic Spark Fellow, who did a lot of work on this platform last year, she was able to get, I think, over 70-something households signed up. We're now at 139 households and 100 tons of CO2 reduced. 42 tons of CO2 reduced towards a goal of 100. But I think we still have not hit our goals, and it's time to take the next step towards engaging more users and reducing more tons of CO2. So in this draft plan right now, we have the overall goals of increasing public awareness of the importance and effectiveness of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increase engagement with the platform, and within the platform, getting people connected to all these different regional resources we talk about all the time, but maybe people who don't attend Climate Action Committee meetings, they might not know about. And then also we'd like to use this as a tool to track achieved CO2 reductions and other reductions, such as in water use, gallons of gas used, therms reduced, tons of waste reduced. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that I'm going to present what we've worked on in the draft plan so far, just with some of these goals, and then I will ask that the committee provide some feedback on what we've worked on so far. So our thoughts on proposed participation goals: we would like to have 500 total households signed up by December 2021. So that gives us 1 year to really get the word out there, engage volunteers, get people to sign up. We currently have 139 households, which means that we have to bring in a little over 300 households to get ourselves close to that 500 goal. We would also like to have 5 to 10 new team leaders, which are volunteers who would offer or volunteer their time to help us spread the word, because just having staff do it, I think we have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources, and limited capacity to reach as many people as possible to get them to sign up and engage with the platform. So having team leaders that come directly from the Albany community and reach out directly to their friends, their neighbors, their family members. We've been told by Community Climate Solutions and community organizing best practice that that's the most effective way to spread the word and actually get meaningful engagement. So these are the proposed goals we have, and I can come back to these. Outcome goals. There's a lot of X's, which are just placeholders, sorry. And that's because depending on what the committee thinks are realistic participation goals, we'll use those participation goals to guide what we think the outcome goals are. So those outcome goals will be tons of CO2 reduced, kilowatt hours reduced, therms reduced, gallons of gas, gallons of water, and dollars saved. So those are just some outcomes we'd like to try to measure by the end of December 2021. And our strategy, these are not necessarily specific actions we will take, but just high-level goals that will help us reach these outcome goals. and that's development of a social media and messaging toolkit. As I mentioned, we're finding that people are engaging a lot more online now and connecting with people in different ways. And this was actually the idea of our intern, Valerie. She would like to build a social media and messaging toolkit to both for the city to post to increase awareness and to engage volunteers, but also then for volunteers to use to engage people in their networks. We would like to do some community events, such as reaching out to community organizations and doing presentations. These will likely be virtual through most of 2021, but obviously, like I said, we'll reassess. And then we'd like to develop community volunteer teams that can then help do some of that outreach and engagement, doing outreach to community groups via email and presentations, and then also potentially some outreach to schools, including potential partnerships with student green teams. I know Bianca engaged the green team last year in doing some door-to-door outreach for Carbon Free Albany. We probably cannot do that in the near future, but there may be some opportunities to partner for virtual engagement. Next steps. This is a tentative timeline for the draft engagement plan. I would like to aim to finalize the plan in December or January, which is just really finalizing those goals, strategies, and outcome goals. In January, February, we'll start engaging volunteers and beginning outreach to community groups. In February and April, really try to expand our capacity to kind of create a ripple effect. Engage volunteers, those volunteers maybe engage some new people who engage some new people. And then between December 2020 and December 2021, we'd like to launch this social media and outreach toolkit, at least in the short term on the city side, and maybe more towards mid-2021, handing that over to some of those volunteers so that then they too can post on their own networks. So this is what we have in mind right now for the draft engagement plan. And at this time, I'd love to hear any questions, then maybe any public comment, and then feedback from the committee.
Tom?
This is great, Lizzie. What I would suggest, I think the key to something like this is through the schools. That's how you're gonna do this. I mean, the community groups in Albany are not big enough to do something like this. I really think this is the kind of thing, I know there's been some outreach already to the schools, but I think if the focus was on appealing to the students who would then go home and get their parents to sign up and maybe get the, different schools competing or different grades competing, I really think that is going to be the key to spreading this more than anything else. That's my experience living here for a while. But I think this is great. I think if you can engage the schools more deeply and you take this kind of approach, I think you got a great chance for succeeding.
I'll just note one little issue with the schools approach is that often the actions are for homeowners to do, and there are definitely actions that students can take, but getting people to swap out heat pump water heaters, I think not a lot of high schoolers have that authority. I know I didn't in high school to swap out appliances. And so I totally agree with you. I think there's a lot of room to do outreach to schools. I think part of it too will have to come from adult volunteers reaching out to their neighbors too.
But if the kids take it home and say, hey, we should be doing something, we can do something at home and get their parents to register, I mean, maybe that's only half the students who were, parents or homeowners, but even the renters can sign up. So I think I think that's how you're going to get the parents to do it. Mm-hmm. if the kids are bringing this home and students are excited about this through all, elementary through high school, I think you could drive this kind of change, this kind of recruitment.
Yeah.
I agree that with Tom that the kids influencing their parents just to get involved is probably the point of it. Yeah, they're not going to make buying decisions, but getting their parents involved in it. But so I think I agree. That's a big prong. The other prong that you've already covered is getting, peer-to-peer is very influential, and that's the climate reality thing that I've done is about going to people that or are peers with, and then you spread the information. So I like that aspect of this as well. I would just want to make sure that we give those people the tools they need to understand what they're supposed to be doing, and what the point of this is, and so yeah. I assume that's part of your plan.
Yeah.
Nick.
Yeah, so I too really like seeing this. It's nice to see. I mean, before we kind of kept trying to get people engaged, and this is a real plan that has some approaches behind it. I liked your idea of having these additional team leaders to help staff. I think this is something that's just, has to be focused on by people. Do you have ideas of where we can, does the city have some ideas of what to tap into to try to bring these leaders in, or at least kick that off or something? Has that been talked about?
Well, we thought we can try to just engage volunteers from the general community by maybe posting in the e-news or posting on Facebook, like, here's an opportunity to be a volunteer to spread the word about carbon-free Albany, just to get some engagement that way. But I also think, from what Patrick's told me, the best way to get really solid volunteers is to reach out to community groups, and then the community groups identify a couple people who can become volunteers, to both increase engagement within that community group and then to also engage people outside of that group.
Are you allowed to contact the people that are already registered on Carbon Free Albany to contact them and see if they would be willing to be advocates for, spreading to their friends? I mean,
yeah, I think you can.
For myself, I just signed up as an individual, so I didn't try to get a community group together. So
yeah, that's a good idea. I should do that.
I wanted to just
Max,
chime in here, just following on to some earlier comments. In terms of the peer support, I think the peer support is great, and I think that's a good model. There's also just the concept of trying to find people who have done a lot of reductions, like they've either electrified their home or put in PV, or really worked through the Carbon-Free Albany site themselves. If there's a way to find or recruit such people, I think that's very valuable also. I guess just a couple of other thoughts for outreach groups. Churches could be a group, or faith-based organizations, although I don't know exactly how those are operating now. But also, we had talked in the past, I believe, about block leaders, because block leaders, in my block, we tend to have a pretty active email, like there was a, unfortunately, maybe a break into somebody's car or something. So there's a general awareness. So reaching out through that network is an existing network, and it's just another approach to reach people, because not everyone may read the newsletter, and I think you just want as many approaches as possible. I like the schools idea. I like the idea of tapping into some of the idealism, which hopefully is not just in kids nowadays, but people who are really wanting to make a difference and trying to advocate to their parents. I like the idea of competitions, like if you can recruit some groups to try to pit them against each other, either at the neighborhood or group level or church level. One other thing is just the the notion of education and outreach for that. The Climate Reality Project has been mentioned. I know Eric and maybe some others in the community have taken that training, but because we have Zoom now, it might be a good opportunity to say we could have, an online event, and Eric, or maybe someone else is going to give, maybe it's just a 30-minute presentation as part of a kickoff for this, because I think there's still opportunity for that, even though, a lot of people are very well informed. Not everybody here's the latest updates, and there's so much going on, which is not so great. We're headed in the wrong direction. I mean, I think there's a role for that also. So I'm just throwing out some ideas just to try to do what we can, because there are a lot of existing groups and existing materials, and I think a lot of people want to do something and they don't even know what to do. So it's a great plan that you've presented to us.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Max. And I will say, I do think we have a member of the public that would like to speak. So unless anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll mention it again. I've already cleaned, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 big bellies on Solano. I clean about 1 a week. Bring out some bucket, some soap, and some water, and I just clean those big bellies. Why don't we just put a sign on the big belly? Just tape a sign on even on the back of it. Just, hey, public, because you know how many people walk up and down Solano and they use the trash cans. And there's one right by the post office. I'm going to clean that one tomorrow by the post office. Thanks for reminding me. So, there's a way. It's right there in the middle of the public. And we keep having these meetings and surveys and all this stuff. And I keep mentioning the usage of our public facilities. And it's owned by the city, right? It's right on Solano. So, if you want to send me the link, I could print it out. We have a copy machine, so I could tape it up there myself. So yeah, that's just an option. If you could put it right there on the big bellies, and the community could know about it. So thank you.
All right, thanks.
Looks like no more public comment.
Did we decide that we have some accessibility to those big belly trash cans for advertising?
So we do, and we actually do have printed advertisements for carbon-free Albany. I think there's one out there in circulation, but we haven't swapped out all the old messages with the new messages. But that is a great idea, and
Get into the rotation.
So we should, throw them in rotation. So
cool.
Thank you for the reminder.
Right. Yeah, Nick.
Yeah, so no more questions, but so you really got me thinking. I wouldn't worry so much about, trying to line up its specific goals of what we're going to hit and everything. I think we just want to get more people in there, because it's a way of spreading the message and having people start to plan what they can do and actually take action. So whether you do that or not, or whether we hit a certain goal of diminished carbon, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time. I think the goal should always be to get more people enrolled and to try to get this thing snowballing. So don't worry too much about that. The other thing I'm thinking is what would also motivate people would be some awards of a type. And I was thinking this could encompass a nice rollout of some key incentives that we could give, maybe using funds that we will get through DD. And so if people form certain groups in their neighborhood, and that neighborhood got the most points or enrolled the most people, those people get a certain amount of a rebate on a electric water heater conversion or something like that. So that we would actually have, you could win something. That's what I'm saying, other than just kind of these good feel-good perks of getting in there and your team kind of has more people than the other, but that there would be motivators that we could put in there that would not only make people try, but actually have them do the right thing in making changes to how they consume electricity.
Yeah, good suggestion. I know Bianca did she ran a challenge between January and June, and we tried to incentivize people with what would you call them? Like a reuse tool, a waste-free lunch kit, I think it was. So yeah, I definitely think there's power in incentives. So yeah, thanks for the suggestion.
I'll just, say going back to I'm surprised, Nick, that you said don't worry too much about the goals, but I'm just kidding. But did the Carbon Free Albany guy have some ideas about why there should be a goal and what kind of goal it should be? And then also I was going to ask, I can't remember how many households there are in Albany, so I don't really have a good context for what 500 households is, in Albany. But does the Carbon Free Albany staff people, do they have a reason for, the motivation for why you would put a goal out there?
You mean as far as like
is there some benefit to getting people like excited about it, or is there some psychology behind it or something?
I think this is just me speaking. I haven't heard anything specific from Community Climate Solutions. I think the CO2 reduced little circle that we see on the front page does kind of serve that purpose of like, let's reduce CO2. As far as the more granular goals, like therms reduced, kilowatt hours reduced, gallons of water might excite people more. But I don't think there's a specific reason, and I don't even think those would be shared with the community. It would just kind of be internally, like, what are we trying to go for? And if the committee doesn't see a need to having those goals, I think that's fine. I think you're right. I think the CO2 reduced is kind of that community motivator. People might not really care about kilowatt hours reduced. I don't know. But yeah, I think if we don't want to focus on those goals specifically, I just thought it would be it's something we typically include in a plan.
Yeah. I mean, you always see those like thermometers on the side of on the streets where like, our goal is $200,000 and here we are. Yeah. And so I don't know if there's some reason for that, but
not for the other ones. For the CO2 one, yes, there's that motivation goal, but the other ones would just be goals that I think we would discuss here. And if there's no real excitement over those, I don't think we'd have to go through the trouble of calculating them. We could.
What about the number of households?
The number of households. I was going to ask Jeff if you have any idea about number of I guess, residential units, because it can be renters too.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around a little bit over 7,000. About 950 of those will be part of UC Village, so that may to some degree be part of it and some degree not, but roughly a little over 7,000.
Great. Thank
you. 500 is kind of a modest goal. It's not like half the household or something. So, but I mean, not that matters. I was just curious. So, 500 sounds like a nice round number and significant number of people getting involved. It feels like that would be I'd support at least having that households goal out there. It feels like that would be a useful number just to put out there, and here we're trying to do this.
Yeah, we have to have goals identified on the front page. I mean, we don't have to, but that spot is there, and if we don't fill it out, it might look like the site isn't complete. So we have to have determined goals for number of households by a certain date, number of tons of CO2 removed by a certain date. And I envision that would be December 2021, unless anyone wanted to come up with a new date. And that can be changed at any time.
Right. Does the committee have any opinion on that? Max? Yeah.
I would favor having some goals for some some things. So, for example, transportation is the largest sector in Albany and also in the state. And people are turning over their cars. I mean, people will still be driving in the future, I think. I mean, even with COVID, maybe there will be some more people who are working at home, but even so, you know, with our climate action, with our climate plan and with the knowledge or just some data that we think that, say, you know, 1 out of every 7 cars is being replaced every year, then, you know, maybe we want to set a goal for the rate at which people are buying zero emission vehicles. Like maybe that rate is, I don't know if we have such data easily available. Maybe it's available from the DMV, but let's just assume that it's a low rate, like 9%. And maybe we want to say we want to achieve a rate which is kind of consistent with where we want to get to in 2030, say for Albany, which maybe we need to double that rate. So I think, you know, we should try to sync it up where possible with our goals for the medium term, which I'd say is 2030, 2035. But I mean, I see your point, Nick, definitely that there's a lot of value in getting a critical mass also. You know, maybe that could be for, you know, buying programs or just encouragement or not, you know, just the peer-to-peer. So there's value in, I think, in both of those things. So, but I do feel like just we do need some eyes on where we're headed and how we think that this can help us achieve the goal. So maybe this we think can get us halfway there, say, you know, just some sort of logic for why the goal is what it is also. And I don't know how that lands up with the goal of 500 homes or, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder.
Next level, maybe.
I wonder if that's more of like a goal to keep in mind. And Michelle, you may know this better than I do, but for tracking like CAP and EV action plan implementation, I think, Max, you were saying this is all these different plans. We want to make sure they're aligned with all their goals. And I think specific to turnover rate of internal combustion engine vehicles, I think that's covered in one of them for sure.
Yeah, we worked on that with the EV action plan goals that we were talking about a couple months ago. So we do have some goals and data related to that specifically.
Great.
Nick?
Yeah, so I phrased it wrong. I didn't mean the goals aren't important. I'm just saying, you know, you could spend a lot of time trying to come up with, you know, some kind of way to figure this all out and make sure it's working. But, you know, the main thing is to get the information out to people so they get informed and can make informed decisions. So I would just take where we are now, how much carbon is done, and then just relationally apply it, you know, just so you get a goal that seems doable. But the real important thing is to get people looking at these actions, getting them to try to do these actions, and to get even more people than the 500 involved. So, you know, my point is that I think sometimes we get a little bit caught up in sort of this analysis paralysis, and what we really want to do is get the word out and get as many people informed, and then hopefully that will, I mean, then even if we did that, those 500 people actually could do nothing. You know, so there's even more of a mission to engage them and make sure that they do pursue those actions. So I think sweating bullets over how many kilowatt hours is in that sense not a constructive use of time. And what I would do is just make an educated guess and run with it rather than spending a whole month trying to figure out what stuff is. I think we just move forward with it and do as much, you know, as quickly as we can, because time is of the essence.
Yeah, that sounds like a good approach. I agree. Getting people to sign up and start taking action is really the big purpose of it. So,
So just to clarify, I had on here, I had 500 households signed up, 500 tons CO2 removed, by December 2021? Are those goals, those are the goals we have to decide on because they'll be displayed on the front page. Are those goals the committee feels comfortable with?
Sounds good to me.
All I would say is if it's in keeping with what we've done in the past. I mean, we have 139 people. We've got X
42, I think.
savings in carbon emissions. So, you know, I mean, if we multiply that times 3, which is essentially what we would be doing, do we get what's 3 times the current carbon savings? Push it up a little bit more, and then you're done.
So that would be somewhere around like maybe 200, 175. I'm bad at math, but I think that works out. Okay.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, we'll keep this conversation ongoing. Thank you for the feedback.
Cool. All right. Next on the agenda was the EV action plan update. And I'm on the EV action plan, and I don't think we have an update. We've met a couple times, so we didn't really get far enough to really give an update, I don't think. Nick, do you want to, or Tom, anything you wanted to add? I mean, we're going to meet again either tomorrow or next week. So
I guess what I like to say is you know, Tom has magnanimously agreed to join the committee and you know, he's put his efforts in that, and we certainly appreciate that. I think we need to get our heads more around it from a higher level. That was sort of my push, and so I had started to develop kind of a higher level. Here's the focus of what we should be. I think we got a bit micro-focused on just doing a one-to-one. How can we get a one-to-one swap of internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles by a certain time based on DMV information and it's sort of like, well, that may or may not happen, but it seems like what we're more thinking about is not just a electric vehicle swap action plan, but more a zero emission transportation action plan. And once you think of it as that bigger, it's like the whole concept of how we view travel and transportation needs to be rethought. And probably, I started thinking about it in terms of you know, other environmental and efficiency goals, which is you reduce, reuse, and recycle. And so what is the methodology of the main thing we want to do is just reduce vehicle trips traveled in ICE vehicles. So certainly just swapping everyone's vehicle out isn't the way, and some people can't afford to do that. So that began to highlight aspects of, you know, public transportation and of renters that live in multifamily housing where they have no control over, you know, how the parking is provided or how home source of charging would be provided, and charge sources and all this stuff became a little bit more key rather than just who's going to buy an electric vehicle. So anyway, I think we're taking, rather than going down and try to work out the granularity of when people will buy a car, we moved it a little bit higher and want to look at what are some other touchstones of how people get involved in transportation in a clean manner. And these touch on other very important things in Albany, like the active transportation plan, the Solano corridor plan, parking requirements, and other things like that. So we're kind of resetting a little bit here, and at least that was sort of my push on the subcommittee. And we've definitely got the information, which I think is valid, about, you know, what would a transition of just a single passenger vehicle aspect look like. But it's a bigger question, especially if you want to get people making the decision sooner rather than later. And it looks like we want to try to do.
I think too, I was also at the subcommittee meeting. I think what the new approach, like others have said, would be to kind of treat it like we did the climate action plan, where we think about those high level goals first and then from there take step down into individual actions. And we should probably check in with this committee along the way. So I imagine there will also be an update in December.
That was our committee action item, was to individually think of 2 or 3 or 4 higher level goals that we want to propose as, to next point, the higher level plan, and not just, we did get into the analysis of the EV conversion a lot, and that's an important thing, but it's not the only thing. So yeah.
Also, just a quick note, I believe we have a hand raised for public comment if now is a good time.
Any other questions from the committee at this point? Okay. Yeah, Max?
I had a question for the subcommittee, which is for VMT reduction. Are you guys thinking of things like, well, telecommuting, or just reducing the number of trips through planning, like trip chaining, or consolidating trips? Because I think for public transit, it's a difficult option, now in particular, right now. So yeah, I was just curious what the thrust might be there.
Yeah. So yes, it gets a lot of complex things. I think we thought about vehicle sharing. There's a whole thing. I just watched a seminar recently. It was a 2-day electric transportation symposium. I forget, based on more on social and environmental justice. So challenge communities of color not being left behind in this. And they actually brought in Uber and Lyft drivers and talked to them about what's keeping them from doing a change to electric vehicles. And it was really, really insightful. And so, it might be, we might, rather than helping more upper middle class people afford an electric vehicle and just swap out gas to electric, it might be better to be thinking about how we can get someone who's struggling and by driving thousands of more miles a month in their Uber car into that vehicle, rather than someone who's going to have a Tesla that sits in the driveway and doesn't go out every day. So, I mean, there's really a lot to think of, and we also agreed we have to, there's also, the benchmarking we were doing right now, which was all we could really do on our own, was looking at DMV records. But then there's all sorts of other stuff that has come up in polls that we've seen, which how many people use mass transit, how many people don't, how many people walk, use a bike, etc. And then the idea of incentivizing other than just single passenger vehicle trips. So there's there's a whole movement now to try to make Americans think in different methods rather than just jumping in the car, turning the key, and going off down the road. And it's very difficult. And we have to think of ways of incentivizing that. So we have thought of it. I mean, there's parking management plans. There's all sorts of other things that you can bring forward to incentivize people to not do just the knee-jerk, easy motorized chair, cruise around town approach to transportation. But it's going to be, it's a challenge.
So we'll work up an update in one of the upcoming meetings. Do you say there's somebody from the public that has a comment? Okay.
Yes. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with riding an electric mobility scooter around town. That's what I do. That's my green alternative. Just to let everybody know, I got 14 of those things. I got them from the cruise ships. Anyway, yeah, that is an electric vehicle. I've been wanting to donate one to the senior center for the longest time. Just haven't got around to doing it. But this electric vehicle thing is great, right? So what about our police department? I mean, when are they going to upgrade to all electric vehicles? It only costs $1 million, or if all the police officers got Tesla Cybertrucks, or even if they got just the $30,000 Tesla or something, at least our police force would have electric vehicle, and all the government entities, they just use diesel and the fire trucks. So what's our fire department going to use? You know, are they going to make an electric fire truck? You know, so I just hope there's improvements for all that. And our public utilities drive these big old trucks, you know, and the price of gas for all these things probably would cost the same price as buying an electric car, no matter what brand, you know, Ford, Chevy, whatever it is, Neo, whatever electric car. But I think our city government should lead the way and show the city an example, to where our city vehicles should be, you know, some of the first to make these changes. That way the community sees, kind of like monkey see, monkey do, you know, the city see, the community members, the residents see, wow, Albany, all their vehicles are electric, you know, then, well, the city's really taking charge and some ownership, and they're practicing what they preach, you know. So in all these electric charging stations, Ranch 99, Tesla one went up. A few months back, I mentioned Tesla has spots. I guess there's one going at Target, possibly. Are we making any policies for our gas stations? You know, Arco, Shell, maybe we can write some letters to these British Petroleum, right? We could write letters to these BP companies saying that if you're going to do business in our city, you got to offer an electric charging station at a petroleum charging station as well. So that's an incentive, you know, because the community is not going to buy all these electric vehicles if their home is not equipped or there's no public place to charge. And if I buy an electric vehicle right now, where am I going to charge it? You know, that's the question. So if we provide places for people to charge their vehicles, more people are going to get them. And
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. All right. Well, that was the update. That's the end of our agenda. Are there any future agenda items that people would like to suggest? Nick?
Yeah, I kind of thought about that. One thing I don't want to lose track of is doing, I'd like to see the city and the school district be more coordinated on the approach to designated critical facilities for resilience. There's a huge opportunity here for both the city and the school district to get some help via East Bay Community Energy and other incentive programs to make the schools, the schools have solar with battery backup, or at least an opportunity to do that. It's a little complicated, but I think we should keep that as an agenda item and have staff check regularly on that. It's probably a discussion that needs to happen at first between the city manager and the superintendent. But I attend the meetings for the environmental action plan committee for the school board, and the superintendent, Dr. Wolf, has been on several of our meetings and is highly interested in this. So, Lizzie, I just want to encourage you to kind of bump that up the chain, and that we as a committee express our commitment to working with the school district, because the school is probably the largest consumer of electricity in the city, and that's, well, not counting the government buildings that are down by the freeway. So I think there's a lot that can happen there, and it actually would bode well for city emergency planning needs and resilience needs that will be coming up. So I think getting a closer connection between city staff and ASUD staff at a high level to promote that would be good. The other thing is I don't want the committee to lose track of what we call the gas ban, or requirement that new construction be fully electric. San Francisco has implemented that now, although they dodged the bullet from the restaurant group by exempting restaurants. And I know San Jose has done something very similar, although they have exemptions too. So this kind of standing by the side, not doing anything approach is, I want to say, is not what I want to see our city doing. I think we need to step somewhat into the fray, and we need to come forward and put that on the plate.
So an update on the gas ban actions.
Well, I think we don't want an update. I know what the update is. Nothing. It's sitting there on hold. Nobody's doing anything about it. So I think we need to push it. It's our issue. You know, as the Climate Action Committee, this is I think one of the most important things we can implement in the city is no new big gas connections. And thank goodness the affordable housing project that's going on down, near the freeway is going to be all electric, but that's just by grace of that the developer said they're going to go that way. So great for them for doing that. Let's see, I got a couple other things here, sorry. Third is, I'm a little worried that we're not really hearing much about the green infrastructure in urban forestry plan. And I'd like to keep some pressure on that, and I think other members should be stepping up and helping out with this. I think Breeding and Choi were sort of looking at this, but it kind of hit a little bit of a wall as far as getting information and with COVID issues. But again, having seen the rising tides and stuff, green infrastructure is a real long rollout thing. I mean, you plant a tree, it's not going to be doing sequestering for many years. So I think we need to move, get at least something started up, even if it's incentivizing volunteer programs within the city or rolling out and really emphasizing tree planting during the upcoming rainy season that we do that. And last, I've been able to go to a lot of webinars that were put on. I think the original organization was Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaborative. I think I sent around some links that people could go to those too, and they were very, very inspirational. One of the groups that participated a lot was a group called the Climate Center, and they have put forward a, sorry about that, let me get back down to my item. They have put forward a Climate Safe California campaign, which is a little bit more accelerated than what our climate action plan is, but is in sync with it. And what they're trying to do is get enough people and entities supporting that. So I wanted to have that as a future item, have the committee members read through it, look at it, see what it is, and see if it makes sense for the city of Albany to come out as being a sponsor, or not a sponsor, they ask you to just endorse it, an endorser of the Climate Safe California campaign. And I can get you that information, Libby.
All right. Anybody else with a future agenda item? I was just going to mention to the committee, as far as going back to the first thing about the budget, that we're an advisory body, so it would be great if we had some proposals for city council in like January, February timeframe. Tom, you were asking about like when should we be doing something, but I mean, I've worked for a big corporate company, and get your ideas in before the budget's set. That's that's how it works, at least in corporate world. So I imagine it works the same in public office. So if we had some ideas in January, February to feed into the city council as an advisory body, I think that'd be a good idea. So just I would encourage us all to be thinking about specific proposals that we can make to spend money. All right. I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we are adjourned. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.